So first and foremost, we want to thank you so much for joining us here on News Talk New Jersey. You know, we're really excited to talk about your national tour, as well as a documentary about the life and career of actor and comedian John Candy. Now, you are the producer for John Candy, I Like Me, and many who knew him, especially in the trailer, they described him as somebody who has made everyone happy and that had a face that made everyone smile. So I want to know, what is your connection that you feel with Candy, other than being Canadian, of course, to produce this film?
There's actually a startling, amount of connections that I have. I mean, obviously we're both Canadian, but we both use humor as a defense mechanism. He owned a sports team, I own a sports team. I mean, there's a lot of weird, symmetries there that I wouldn't have expected. But John was a person that was kind of a teacher for me, really. Watching him growing up and how he would use comedy in a way that was a little bit different. He never punched down at people. He really didn't want to hurt anyone, but that didn't mean you lacked edge or you couldn't thrive in this industry. I mean, he was a titan. And it was certainly like any career, it's peaks and valleys, and we get to kind of explore all of that. But he really was a good person when nobody was watching. And I love that about him because I think we live in a world right now that's so curated. Everything is broadcast. I mean, every single person is a media company, technically, with social media. So, the idea of somebody doing, and making a room a little bit better than, how they found it, when they leave, seeing people, regardless of whether they're powerful or whether they're, just the guy picking them up and taking them to work, or a vendor on the street selling a hot dog. I mean, John was kind to everybody, and it really shines through, I think, not just in his work, but you really kind of we get to explore some of that in his life, but it also was a huge problem for him too, because he was a people pleaser and he dealt with some mental health issues, and those two are in direct opposition. They are antithetical to each other because the people pleaser doesn't want to burden anybody with their problems or their trouble, and anyone who's struggling with their mental health, and I've certainly had moments in my life where I have, the only thing you can do to help is to reach out and actually talk about yourself. And when those two things run in direct conflict with each other, it makes it really hard. And I know I struggle with that as a person who's a bit of a people pleaser too. It's tricky, and I think ultimately it's kind of what was the catalyst for John leaving us so early.
And it's a lot to learn. Like you said, people remember how you made them feel, and it's tough to fight both of those things, a people pleaser and dealing with mental health. For your career, you have incredible comedic timing. You are one of my favorite actors as well. How do you use what you learned about John Candy in your movies, or even when you're in between takes? How do you channel him for your movies, especially Deadpool? I know you have a lot of Easter eggs of his from his movies in there.
Yeah, I do. I really, my movies are, particularly the ones I write on or produce, are really, they all have a moment of sort of my own cinematic moment of silence for John. But I watched and learned the same way I think they did. I had, I let myself suck. These guys also let themselves, be bad at the job before you can be good. Nobody can be good at anything until they really embrace the idea of being bad. That's practice. That's what that is. I always tell my kids, like, make mistakes, but don't waste them. And it's really important. So my early career, I was mostly doing impressions of these people: Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, John Candy, most definitely. And as you get older, even Buster Keaton and Jack Benny and all these guys, from back in the day, I would use them all, and then amalgamation of them all starts to become who you really are. And eventually you get some of my earliest movies, like National Lampoon. I'm really just doing a Chevy Chase impression. That's
Right.
it. Like, that's just how I'm trying to get by. He did it well. I'm going to try to do it like he did it. But they're all part of me. Dan Aykroyd, interviewing Dan Aykroyd, and really I got to interview Bill Murray, and also take a moment to say, hey, like, you were my school. So much of what I do is informed by you and your work. Was special for me. It was nice to get to highlight that.
Right, and I can tell the heart that you have for this. And I want to talk about the national tour, which is a really intimate moment that people get a chance to not only watch the screening, but speak with you and family and friends. Why is it important to not just produce the film, but offer this national tour for people to get a closer look at who John Candy was? Why is that important to you?
Well, I mean, sports, concerts, and film are important to me because we live in a very siloed existence. We are often on our little portable devices, living in a digital kind of netherworld. And collective experiences, togetherness is really important to me. And I think it's really important to everyone else too. I'm a co-owner with Rob Mack of Wrexham AFC, a football club in Wales. It's just divided politically there as it is here and anywhere else in the world. But when they walk in that stadium, they put their arms around each other, regardless of their, belief systems, and they all cheer for the same team. They all sing the same filthy songs. They all have the same communal and collective experience. And I think those are more and more important now than ever. So for a movie like this, I wanted to not just show the doc, to large audiences in a theater, but I wanted to go and experience it with them and talk about the movie with them and bring out very special guests who have connections to John, some giant stars, some family, different people that can really kind of offer a different perspective. And there's nothing I love more than a different perspective right now because we're typically spoon-fed, our own in an echo chamber. So it's wonderful to kind of have that shared experience.
It's definitely going to be a great moment. Those going to the State Theater in New Brunswick are going to love it. My last question for you, beyond planes, trains, and automobiles, Cool Runnings, as a Jamaican, love that, Uncle Buck, and, many other iconic films, what are you hoping that the audiences take away from it when they watch it when it premieres? What's the one thing you hope they take from watching the life of John Candy?
Well, I think everybody takes something different, from any experience, but I really hope that they see that you don't have to kind of be cruel to get ahead anywhere in life. John never did that, never played by those rules. We really look a little bit at some of the like those invisible moments of kindness that, he did that he left behind that he didn't broadcast or advertise. And I really believe that is an important message now. The movie's also just hilarious. You get to really laugh and experience that retrospective of some of those moments that are just indelible for so many of us, but it's also heartbreaking. You'll laugh and you'll cry. And I think that's a really, that's a really important thing. I think it was one of the earliest, I think it was Douglas Fairbanks or Mary Pickford who said, make them laugh, make them cry, but then make sure you make them laugh again before they leave. And it's this movie really, really does that in spades, and I'm so proud of it.